The town of Pinnacrist woke to the first scream at 6:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mary Johnson discovered her son's empty bed still warm, the window closed and locked from the inside. By noon, 3 more families found their children missing without a trace. Jack Porter sat stone-faced as Sheriff Dale explained that there was nothing to go on. No fingerprints, no footprints, no broken locks or forced windows. My security system was armed all night, Jack said, running a hand through his short gray hair. Years of Navy SEAL training had taught him to stay calm in crisis, but this was different. This was Sam, his 8-year-old son. It was disabled, Sheriff Dale replied, checking his notes, but not triggered. Same as the others. Jack stared at the sheriff. That's not possible. That system needs my fingerprint. Across town, Dr. Eleanor Bennett paced the halls of her home, ignoring the FBI agents dusting her daughter's room for evidence. Her mind, brilliant enough to earn her top security clearance at the National Physics Laboratory, couldn't process the simple fact that Lely was gone. Dr. Bennett, a young agent, approached. We found something odd. He held up a plastic evidence bag containing what looked like grains of sand. This was on your daughter's windowsill. It's glowing slightly. Eleanor grabbed the bag, holding it up to the light. The grains shimmered with a faint blue glow that seemed to pulse. By nightfall, the count reached 6 children missing. By Thursday, 12 had vanished from their beds. National news vans clogged Pinnacrist's small streets. Parents took turns standing guard in their children's rooms with loaded guns. Jack Porter didn't wait for answers. He searched Sam's room inch by inch, while the FBI worked the other houses. In the corner where the floor met the wall, he found it, a trace of fine, glittering dust. He collected it in a plastic bag, careful not to touch it directly. On Friday morning, Maria Garcia called Jack. Her daughter Olivia had been among the taken. Andy's back from overseas, she said, mentioning her husband, a Marine that Jack had met at a veterans event. He's losing his mind, Jack. He says you might have found something. That afternoon, the 2 veterans sat at Jack's kitchen table, comparing notes. Andy had found the same strange residue in his daughter's room. Military's involved now, Andy said quietly. Above FBI level. Something about the dust. Not saying what. I have a friend at the lab, Jack replied. I'll get answers. That night, more lights appeared in the sky above Pinnacrist. Bright, silent, and fast. Jack photographed them from his backyard before they vanished. The pictures showed nothing but smears of light. Dr. Bennett didn't need pictures. She'd seen the lights herself through her home telescope. They moved like nothing made on Earth, making turns at speeds that would crush any human pilot. When her phone rang at midnight, the caller ID showed a number she hadn't seen in years. Eleanor, it's General Ward. We need you in Washington. Now. I'm not leaving Pinnacrist while Lily is missing, she said firmly. That's why we need you, the general replied. The residue found in the children's rooms. It contains elements not on our periodic table, and we've detected an object in orbit, something big that wasn't there 3 days ago. Eleanor felt her heart skip. You think there's a connection to the missing children? I think there's a reason your daughter was taken, along with the others. All 12 have parents with ties to government research or special forces. This wasn't random. By dawn, Jack Porter was awakened by a knock at his door. He opened it to find Eleanor Bennett standing there, her eyes red from crying but her face determined. Mr. Porter, she said, I know we've only met at school functions, but I believe our children were taken for a specific reason. She paused. And I don't think whoever took them is from Earth. Jack stepped aside to let her in. Tell me everything you know. 2 weeks after the children vanished, the world changed forever. It happened during an ordinary Tuesday afternoon as millions watched their screens flicker and change to show the same image. A massive silver ship hanging in Earth's orbit. We are the Zarn Collective, said a calm voice in perfect English as the image zoomed in to show a being with pale blue skin and large black eyes. We come in peace and wish to establish relations with your world. In the White House Situation Room, military leaders argued for immediate action, while diplomats urged caution. The president chose diplomacy. Within hours, Ambassador Kate Monroe was selected to lead Earth's first contact team. Jack Porter watched the news with Andy Garcia in his living room, both men silent as the world celebrated first contact. "This is about our kids," Andy finally said. "The timing is too perfect." Jack nodded. Eleanor Bennett was called to join the scientific team meeting the aliens. She promised to look for any connection. The United Nations hosted the first official meeting 3 days later. Eleanor Bennett stood with other scientists, studying the 5 different alien species that made up the Zarn collective delegation. Their technology was beyond anything humans had created. Hovering translation devices, materials that changed properties with a touch, and energy sources that seemed to break the laws of physics. "We have watched your civilization with interest," said the lead alien, who called himself Mentor. "Your development has been unique." "How long have you been watching us?" Eleanor asked directly. Mentor's large eyes blinked slowly. "We only recently discovered your world." Eleanor noticed how the smaller alien beside Mentor shifted uncomfortably. A lie, she thought. That evening, Ambassador Monroe approached Eleanor at the hotel where the human delegation stayed. "You noticed it too," Monroe said quietly. "They're hiding something." Eleanor nodded. "They avoid specific questions about when they first came to Earth, and their technology. Some of it seems designed specifically to interact with human biology." "I need proof before I can raise concerns," Monroe replied. Back in Pinnacrist, Jack Porter and Andy Garcia had made progress of their own. With help from a scientist friend, they discovered the strange dust contained particles that responded to human DNA. "It's like a tag," the scientist explained over a secure video call. "Something that would let them track specific humans." "Our children," Andy said grimly. "Why tag them at all?" Jack asked. "Why not just take them?" "Maybe they needed to study them first," the scientist suggested. "Find the right ones." That night, Eleanor called Jack from New York. "The aliens asked for our medical research," she said, her voice tense, "specifically about brain development in children. They seemed especially interested in how human children process information differently than adults." "They took our kids to study their brains," Jack said, feeling sick. "I think so," Eleanor whispered. "And there's more. I managed to get a sample of their technology to analyze. Jack, it contains the same strange element as the dust in our children's rooms." The next morning, everyone's phones buzzed with an emergency alert. The Zarn ship had moved, positioning itself over North America. Smaller craft were leaving the main ship, headed for major cities. "They're calling it a goodwill tour," Andy said as he and Jack watched military jets scramble to escort the alien vessels. Jack's phone rang. It was Eleanor. "I found something," she said without greeting. "One of their junior delegates, Vexel, approached me privately. Said he wanted to help. He gave me this." She sent a file to Jack's phone. When he opened it, his heart stopped. The video showed a sterile white room with clear containers. Inside each container was a sleeping child. Jack recognized Sam instantly. "They have them," Jack whispered. "The aliens have our children." Ambassador Monroe stared at the video for the 5th time. The sleeping children floated in clear tanks filled with blue liquid. Machines blinked beside each tank, recording data. She recognized several faces from the missing children reports. "Where did you get this?" she asked Eleanor Bennett. "From Vexel," Eleanor replied. "He's a junior scientist in their delegation. He says a group within the Zarn collective has been taking human children for years." Monroe's face hardened. "I'm taking this directly to the president." An hour later, Monroe sat in the Oval Office with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The president watched the video silently. "Confirm these are our missing children," he finally said. "Yes, sir," said the FBI director. "We've identified 8 from Pinnacrist and 4 others from previous cases. The president looked at his military advisors. Options. "We have nuclear weapons aimed at their ship," said General Harris. "And if they have more ships?" the president asked. The room fell silent. "Sir," Monroe said, "let me confront them first. Diplomatically, demand the children back." The president nodded. "You have 48 hours before I consider military action." Back in New York, Eleanor met secretly with Vexel. The alien was smaller than the others, with lighter blue skin and trembling hands. "Why are you helping us?" Eleanor asked. "What they're doing is wrong," Vexel said. "The children were taken for research. Human brains develop differently than any species we've encountered. Some of our scientists believe human children hold the key to advanced intelligence." "Where are they keeping the children?" "On the main ship now, but they plan to move them to our home system soon." Vexel handed her a small device. "This contains maps of our ship and security codes. It will help you find them." In Pinnacrist, Jack Porter received an encrypted call from Eleanor. "The government knows," she said. "They're giving diplomacy a chance, but they're preparing for war." "War against aliens?" Jack asked. "Do we stand a chance?" "I don't know, but I have a plan to get our children back without waiting." That night, Jack and Andy met with 4 other parents of missing children. All had military or intelligence backgrounds. Eleanor joined by video call. "The device Vexel gave me shows where the children are held," she explained. "But we need a way to reach the ship." "I might have a solution," said Paul Lewis, whose daughter was among the missing. He had worked at NASA. "There's a prototype shuttle at White Sands. It's designed for rapid orbital deployment. With the right codes, we could take it." "That's stealing government property," Andy pointed out. "They took our kids," Jack replied. "I don't care what we have to steal to get them back." In New York, Ambassador Monroe faced the Zarn delegation. She placed a tablet showing the video of the children on the table. "Explain this," she demanded. Mentor, the lead alien, studied the video calmly. "This appears to be some kind of medical facility." "Those are Earth children," Monroe said, "abducted from their homes." "If humans have gone missing, we regret this tragedy," Mentor replied smoothly. "But the Zarn Collective would never take them." "Then who made this recording aboard your ship?" Mentor's eyes narrowed. "This meeting is over until we investigate this serious accusation." As the aliens left, Monroe received a message from Intelligence Officer Ryan Cooper. "They're locking down their ship. All shuttles recalled. They know we know." At White Sands Missile Range, Jack Porter, Andy Garcia, and 3 other parents followed Paul Lewis through a side entrance. Using Paul's old access codes, they entered a hangar containing a sleek black shuttle. "Will it fly?" Jack asked. "It will," Paul replied. "But we need a pilot." "And you need me," said a voice behind them. They turned to see Eleanor Bennett standing there. "I know where our children are, and Vexel has agreed to meet us once we're aboard." "How did you get here?" Andy asked. Eleanor smiled grimly. "The president sent me. Unofficially, he wants our children back without starting a war. We have 12 hours before he runs out of patience." Jack looked at the shuttle, then at the determined faces around him. "Let's bring our kids home." The stolen shuttle rose through the atmosphere, vibrating violently as Paul Lewis fought the controls. Jack Porter and Andy Garcia strapped themselves into the seats beside Eleanor Bennett, who studied Vexel's device. "We're being tracked," Paul called out. "Air Force jets on our tail." "They won't shoot us down," Jack said. "The president approved this mission." Unofficially, Eleanor reminded him, "If we fail, he'll deny everything." The radio crackled. "Unidentified craft. This is Captain Rogers of the United States Air Force. Return to base immediately." Paul ignored the message, pushing the shuttle faster. The jets followed for another minute, then peeled away as the shuttle left Earth's atmosphere. "They're letting us go," Andy said with relief. "Or leaving us to the aliens," Jack replied, pointing ahead. The massive Zarn ship filled the view screen, silver and smooth like a giant teardrop. Smaller craft moved around it like bees around a hive. "How do we get in without being spotted?" Andy asked. Eleanor held up Vexel's device. "There's a maintenance entrance on the underside. The codes should get us through." Paul guided the shuttle underneath the alien vessel, approaching a rectangular opening barely larger than their craft. Eleanor entered the code, and the doors slid open. "I'm not detecting any alarms," she said, checking the device. "Vexel must have disabled them." The shuttle docked with a soft bump. The team gathered their weapons, stun guns provided by the FBI, that the president had again unofficially approved. "The children are being held 3 levels up," Eleanor said. "Vexel should meet us at the first junction." They entered the alien ship through the airlock, finding themselves in a curved corridor with glowing blue walls. The air smelled like cinnamon and metal. "This way," Eleanor whispered, following the map on Vexel's device. At the first junction, they found not Vexel but 2 dead Zarn guards, their blue skin now pale gray. "Someone got here first," Jack said, checking the bodies. "No wounds. Looks like poison." "Vexel," Andy suggested. "Maybe," Eleanor replied, looking worried. "Or maybe someone doesn't want us to succeed." They continued upward, moving through empty corridors. The ship seemed eerily quiet. "Where is everyone?" Paul asked. "Mentor announced ship-wide rest period," said a voice behind them. They turned to see Vexel step from a hidden door. "Most crew is in sleep chambers. I arranged it." "You killed the guards," Jack stated. Vexel's large eyes blinked slowly. "They would have killed you," and told Mentor. "I had no choice." "Why help us?" Andy asked. "Because I was once like your children," Vexel said. "Taken from my world for study. I was the only survivor of my group." Eleanor touched Vexel's shoulder gently. "I'm sorry." "We must hurry," Vexel said. "The children are through here." They followed Vexel to a large circular door. Eleanor entered the code, and it slid open to reveal a vast white room filled with the clear tanks they had seen in the video. In each tank floated a child, eyes closed, breathing through masks. "Sam." Jack rushed to a tank holding his son. "Olivia." Andy found his daughter nearby. "Are they hurt?" Eleanor asked Vexel as she located Lily's tank. "No," Vexel replied. "They are in suspended animation while their brains are scanned. The process is harmless, but must be ended carefully." Vexel moved to a control panel and began pressing symbols. One by one, the liquid drained from the tanks. The children remained asleep as the glass walls slid down. "They will wake soon," Vexel said, "but we must be gone before they fully wake. Their first cries will trigger automatic alerts." Jack gathered Sam in his arms, the boy's skin cold and damp. "How do we get 12 sleeping children back to the shuttle?" "I have brought hover stretchers," Vexel said, pulling devices from a wall panel. "But we must move quickly. Mentor suspects a traitor." Alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed across the white room. "We've been discovered," Vexel said, eyes wide with fear. "Mentor is coming. Get the children on the stretchers now." Jack shouted over the blaring alarms. The team moved quickly, placing each child on a hover stretcher. The children remained asleep, their small chests rising and falling steadily. "The main exit is locked down," Vexel said, checking a panel on the wall. "We must use the service tunnels." Eleanor activated the hovering function on Lily's stretcher. "Lead the way." Vexel pressed his hand against a seemingly solid wall, revealing a hidden door. "This way." They hurried into a narrow tunnel lit by dim blue lights, pushing the floating stretchers ahead of them. Behind them, they heard the main door to the lab slide open. "They're in the tunnels," a voice shouted in an alien language that somehow translated in their minds. "Vexel, they can track us?" Jack asked, carrying a stun gun in one hand while guiding Sam's stretcher with the other. "Yes, but not precisely," Vexel replied. "The tunnels confuse their systems. They reached a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. "We need to split up," Andy suggested. "Confuse them more." Jack nodded. "Eleanor, you and Paul take 4 children down the left path. Andy and I will take 4 down the right. Vexel, can you take the last 4 children through the middle?" "No," Eleanor said firmly. "I don't trust splitting the children." Before they could decide, the tunnel behind them filled with light. Shadows of approaching guards stretched along the wall. "No time to argue," Jack said. "Vexel, which path leads back to our shuttle?" "All of them, eventually," Vexel answered. "But the right path is fastest." "Then we all go right," Jack decided. They rushed down the right tunnel, the stretchers floating smoothly ahead of them. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter as they navigated through a maze of passages. Suddenly, Sam's eyes fluttered open on his stretcher. "Dad," he whispered. Jack's heart leaped. "I'm here, buddy. Stay quiet. We're going home." One by one, the other children began to wake, confused and frightened. Lily reached for her mother's hand. "Mom, the blue people," she said. "They put things in our heads." Eleanor froze. "What things, Lily?" "Little machines, to listen to our thoughts." Vexel looked alarmed. "Mentor must have implanted neural monitors. They can track the children's thoughts." "Can they hear us now?" Jack asked. "Not yet," Vexel replied. "The children's brains are still waking up. But soon." "We need to move faster," Andy urged. They increased their pace, the now awake children holding onto their stretchers as they zoomed through the tunnels. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder again. "They'd figured out which way we went," Paul said, looking back nervously. They turned a corner and found themselves facing a dead end. "Vexel." Jack turned to the alien accusingly. "This is not possible," Vexel said, touching the wall frantically. "The tunnel should continue." "It's a trap," Andy growled, raising his stun gun. "No," Vexel insisted. "Mentor must have changed the ship's layout. He can do that. The walls can move." Eleanor studied the wall closely. "There are seams here. This wall was added recently." Jack placed his hand on the wall. "Can we break through?" "Our weapons might," Andy suggested. "Wait," Vexel said, pulling a small device from his pocket. "This might help." He placed it against the wall. The device hummed, and slowly the wall began to dissolve. "Acid?" Paul asked. "Molecular destabilizer," Vexel explained. "It will only last a few minutes before the wall reforms." As the hole grew large enough, they began pushing the stretchers through. Jack went first with Sam, followed by Andy with Olivia. One by one, the parents guided their children through the opening. Eleanor was about to follow when the tunnel behind them lit up with bright light. Mentor stood there, surrounded by guards, his pale blue skin now flushed dark with anger. "Vexel, you disappoint me," Mentor said calmly. "Give me the children, and perhaps your punishment will be merciful." Vexel stepped forward, placing himself between Mentor and the hole in the wall. "Go," he said to Eleanor without turning. "I will hold them as long as I can." Eleanor hesitated, then pushed Lily's stretcher through the hole and followed quickly. Behind her, she heard Vexel cry out in pain. On the other side, they found themselves in a large hangar. Their shuttle waited just 50 meters away. "We're almost there," Jack said. "Let's go home." Paul Lewis ran ahead to prepare the shuttle while the others guided the hovering stretchers across the hangar floor. The children were fully awake now, sitting up and looking around with wide, frightened eyes. "Is that our ride home?" Sam asked his father, pointing at the shuttle. "Yes, buddy," Jack replied, trying to sound calm. "We'll be home soon." Behind them, the wall where they had escaped began to reform. Alien shouts echoed from the other side. "They're coming through," Andy warned, urging the group to move faster. Paul had the shuttle's door open, and its engines humming. "Hurry," he called. "I detect movement in other parts of the hangar. They're surrounding us." Eleanor helped Lily off her stretcher and into the shuttle. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "My head hurts," Lily said, touching her temple. "And I can hear voices. Not English voices." The other children nodded, reporting similar experiences. The neural monitors, Eleanor realized. They're activating. As the last child entered the shuttle, doors around the hangar slid open. Blue-skinned guards poured in, aiming strange weapons at the humans. "Everyone inside now," Jack ordered, firing his stun gun at the approaching guards. The weapon sent out blue waves that dropped 2 aliens to the floor. Andy joined him, covering their retreat. Eleanor glanced back at the reforming wall just in time to see Vexel squeeze through a small remaining gap. His clothing was torn and dark blue liquid. His blood stained his side. "Vexel," she cried. The alien stumbled toward them as Mentor stepped through the gap behind him, flanked by more guards. "Stop them," Mentor commanded. Jack fired his stun gun at Mentor, but the alien leader raised his hand, and the blue wave simply bent around him. "Your weapons cannot harm me," Mentor said calmly. "Return the children, and your deaths will be quick." "Get in the shuttle," Jack shouted to Eleanor. "We'll hold them off." Eleanor hesitated but then ran for the shuttle. Vexel limped beside her, clutching his wound. Inside the shuttle, the children huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Paul worked the controls frantically. "The hangar doors won't open," he reported. "They've locked us in." Vexel collapsed into a seat. "Let me," he gasped, reaching for the shuttle's control panel. His fingers danced over the symbols, entering commands. Outside, Jack and Andy retreated step by step toward the shuttle, firing continuously to slow the approaching guards. "We can't hold them much longer," Andy shouted. Suddenly, the children cried out in unison, clutching their heads. "He's hurting us," Lily screamed. "Mentor is in our heads." Eleanor embraced her daughter protectively. "How do we stop it?" "We can't," Vexel said weakly. "Not here. The neural monitors must be removed surgically." In the cockpit, Paul looked up in alarm. Something's happening. On the shuttle's view screen, they saw multiple ships approaching the Zarn vessel. "Earth ships?" Eleanor asked hopefully. "No," Vexel replied. "Those are Zarn defense ships. They're responding to Mentor's alert." Paul's hands flew over the controls. The hangar doors are opening. Outside, Jack and Andy made a final dash for the shuttle. Guards fired, missing them by inches. They leaped aboard as the door began to close. "Go, go, go," Jack shouted. The shuttle lifted off, shooting out of the hangar as weapons fire erupted around them. The ship shook violently. "We're hit," Paul called out. "Engines damage. Can we make it back to Earth?" Jack asked, strapping himself in beside his son. "Maybe," Paul replied grimly, "but we've got company." On the view screen, 3 Zarn fighter ships pursued them, firing morning shots across their path. Eleanor turned to Vexel. "Why aren't they destroying us?" "The children," Vexel explained, pressing a cloth to his wound. "Mentor wants them back alive." On Earth, Ambassador Monroe stood in the White House Situation Room, watching satellite imagery of the space battle unfolding. "The rescue team is in trouble," she told the president. "The Zarn ships are pursuing them." The president looked at his military advisors. "Options." General Harris stepped forward. "Sir, we have a new weapon system, untested against alien technology, but it might work." "What weapon?" the president asked. "Project Spear, sir, based on technology we recovered from previous unacknowledged alien contacts." The president considered for only a moment. "Deploy it. Now." Monroe looked at the satellite images again, watching as more Zarn ships moved to intercept the small human shuttle. "Hurry," she whispered. The damaged shuttle sped toward Earth, trailing sparks and smoke. Paul fought with the controls as the ship shuddered beneath them. Behind them, the Zarn fighters closed in. "We won't make it," Andy said, looking at the radar screen showing the alien ships gaining on them. Jack turned to Vexel, who sat bleeding on the floor, surrounded by the children. Is there anything we can do? Vexel looked at the children with sad eyes. The neural monitors. They connect the children to Zarn systems. Perhaps. Perhaps what? Eleanor demanded. If the children focus together, they might be able to disrupt the Zarn ship's controls. The monitors work both ways. The parents exchanged worried glances. You want to use our children as weapons? Jack asked. To save their lives, Vexel replied weakly. It won't harm them. Lily stepped forward. I want to try, Mom. One by one. The other children agreed. Sam sat beside Lily, taking her hand. We can hear the ships, he explained, like whispers in our heads. Eleanor nodded reluctantly. What do they need to do? Join hands, Vexel instructed. Close your eyes. Think about the ships following us. Imagine them stopping, turning away. The 12 children formed a circle on the shuttle floor. They closed their eyes, their faces serious with concentration. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then Lily gasped. I see them. The ships, their engines, their weapons. Me too, Sam said, his voice distant. I can touch them with my thoughts. On the view screen, the nearest Zarn fighter suddenly veered off course, spinning wildly. It's working, Paul exclaimed from the cockpit. A second fighter broke formation, its weapons powering down. The children's faces strained with effort, sweat beading on their foreheads. Something's happening, Eleanor said, watching the main Zarn ship on the view screen. It had stopped pursuing them, hanging motionless in space. Suddenly, all 12 children cried out in pain. He's fighting back. Lily sobbed. Mentor is so strong. Break the connection, Jack urged. Stop now. We can't, Sam replied through gritted teeth. He's holding us. On the view screen, a new light appeared. A brilliant blue beam shot from Earth toward the Zarn ships. Where it touched the nearest fighter, the ship simply disappeared. Project Spear, Eleanor whispered. The president deployed it. The beam swept through space, touching 3 more Zarn fighters. They vanished instantly. Then the beam focused on the main ship. The children screamed in unison as the beam hit the Zarn vessel. The great ship shuddered, patches of its hull disappearing where the beam touched. But it didn't break apart. Mentor is using the children somehow, Vexel explained, his voice fading. Using their minds to shield the ship. We have to break the connection, Eleanor insisted. It's killing them. Vexel pulled himself up with effort. There is a way. He placed his hands on Lily's and Sam's heads. Children, focus on Mentor. Find him in your minds. The children's faces calmed slightly as they redirected their focus. We see him, Lily said, in a room full of light. Now push, Vexel instructed. All of you together, push him out of your minds. The shuttle rocked as a shockwave washed over them. On the view screen, the Zarn ship suddenly flared with internal explosions. The blue beam from Earth cut through it like a knife through butter. The ship broke apart, fragments scattering across space. The children collapsed, released from the mental battle. Parents rushed to hold them, checking for injuries. They're okay, Eleanor announced after examining Lily. Just exhausted. Paul called from the cockpit. Earth is hailing us. They're sending ships to bring us home. Jack looked out the view screen at the debris floating where the Zarn ship had been. We just started a war with an alien race, he said quietly. No, Vexel replied, his strength fading fast. You ended one that began when they took your children. My people will know the truth now. Your people? Andy asked. Vexel nodded weakly. The Zarn Collective is made of many species. Most don't know what Mentor was doing, taking children from developing worlds, experimenting on them. It violated our deepest laws. Eleanor checked Vexel's wound. We need to get you medical help. Too late for me, Vexel whispered. But not for the others like me, or for your children. As Earth ships approached to escort them home, the children slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Jack watched his son's face, wondering what changes the alien technology had made to him. "Will they be normal again?" he asked Eleanor. She looked at the sleeping children thoughtfully. "I don't think any of us will be normal again. The universe just got a lot bigger, and humanity just announced itself in a way no one can ignore." The blue-green sphere of Earth filled the view screen as they headed home.